Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from YourBlackWorld.com. This week you saw that Malcolm Shabazz, the grandson of the great Malcolm X, died this week in an unfortunate incident in Mexico. There are a lot of details that are still not entirely clear. I've heard random stories about, a bar fight and being thrown off a building and being lured by a woman and things like that. But then I've heard other extreme stories about, the CIA's involvement, things like that, which we can't throw that out of the loop, either, because we know that the CIA and the FBI, that they do all kinds of underhanded stuff. So really nobody knows exactly how Malcolm died, and the family really hasn't said much. And so really to kind of dig deeper into this issue and to kind of talk about it a little bit, I wanted to talk to my homegirl, my partner in crime, Miss Yvette Carnell. How you doing today, Yvette?
Doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing really good, really good. It's a Monday. Life is good. We've got our crappy audio system up as usual, but our goal is to get the information to the people in the best way we can, and we are going to do it. Damn it, no matter what it takes. That's right. I was really saddened by what happened with Malcolm Shabazz. I was intrigued not just by his life, but also by what happened around his death, as well as the responses of the community to his death. And I was wondering, I guess it's hard to sort of know where to begin, to talk about him and to talk about his life. But maybe we could start from the beginning. When you think about the life of Malcolm Shabazz, what are some of the first things that come to mind for you?
Honestly, the first things that come to mind to me are the tragedies that I see with a lot of people who come from, greatness in terms of whether it be MLK or Martin. But in this instance, I think about the fire that I think he said, a while ago while he was a kid, and I think about all he went through. So what strikes me in my mind is what this young man had to go through, what his life was like because of who Malcolm was and how that manifested in his everyday life. So I think he was trying to do some really good stuff towards the end. I remember seeing some stuff about him traveling to Iran and different symposiums to speak. But there's another part to that story as well that strikes me as sort of sad.
Well, I agree with you. I think that his life was certainly not what we hoped it would be. Let's just say that. I think most people can agree with that. What's interesting to me is that people seem to tiptoe around around the lives of people, or the certain things that you shouldn't really bring up when you talk about a public figure. Remember when Whitney Houston died from drugs, people got really offended because one of our bloggers put up a picture of Whitney at her worst, and they said, well, that's not appropriate. You shouldn't talk about that, because that's just mean. That's just rude. And really, yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about Whitney's life in an honest way, because I feel that the only way you're going to learn about the dangers of drugs is if you really talk about it. Whitney, for years, people warned Whitney that if you don't, make a change in your life, this is going to be your fate. So this idea that somehow, it was just bad luck, or that God, that it somehow has to do with what God did or did not do, I think is a little bit problematic. Because we are sort of focused on, I think, the wrong things. I think we should be focused on how we can learn lessons from the lives of people that we admire, as opposed to simply pretending like they never made any mistakes. So, when you hear people say, even the fact that you brought up the fire that Malcolm set when he was 12 years old, there are people who would object to that. There are people who would say, look, Yvette, you shouldn't mention that. You shouldn't talk about what happened with the fire. That's just not appropriate. That has nothing to do with how he died. The CIA killed him. He was doing all the right things. What do you say to people when they tell you that that's just something that you shouldn't bring up?
Well, the key issue for me is that just because he set that fire doesn't mean that he was a bad kid. It doesn't mean that he was a bad man. I mean, I think if most of us passed away, there would be something in our lives that, if published, we may feel a little bad about, we may feel a little bit embarrassed about. So I just think the idea that we should just skim over these things as if they don't matter, because we're so desirous of seeing people in a good light is problematic. I mean, I tell people, even when you look at King, King had his own problems in terms of adultery. Even when you look at Thurgood Marshall and his history, with the FBI, there were some issues there, but that doesn't take away from what they contributed. So I think that's what I would, that's how I would best answer that question.
Well, I think that, when I look at the life of Malcolm Shabazz, I see a good guy. I see a good guy. I see a complex guy. I know that I never met Malcolm, but I know Etan Thomas, who I respect a lot. He speaks very favorably of Malcolm. And in that regard, I feel that he was a person that really seemed to want to be the kind of man that everybody else wanted him to be. I looked through his life and I've studied his life in detail in terms of how he grew up and what he went through with his mother and what his mother went through. I mean, watching her father die at the age of 4. I mean, if you're just real about it, you have to talk about the fact that his mother had problems with drugs and alcohol. You have to talk about the fact that he probably spent a lot of his life feeling abandoned and unloved because, I mean, when your mother's shuffling you from place to place and leaving you with people that you don't want to be with, you've got a lot of issues that you're dealing with. If you talk about, for example, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it says that in order to really even have a chance to become a Malcolm X type person, you have to achieve self-actualization, which is at the top of the hierarchy, which means that all your lower level needs have to be met. Your need for security, food and water, your need for acceptance, your need for esteem, all these other things. And I feel that with Malcolm, these social problems that he had to deal with at an early age caused him to be unable to feel like a complete and fulfilled human being, which ultimately led to his troubles with the justice system, which led to the complications, the emotional complications he had to deal with, which might have played a role in other things, other mistakes he made. I mean, you and I even talked about the fact he had that teardrop tattoo, and people don't talk about that teardrop tattoo, but from what I understand, that means you've killed somebody. Am I correct about that?
No, that's the street assumption. That's why rappers tat that on their eye. That's a tat for every death. So I don't even understand why you would have that. Even if you haven't hurt or murdered anyone, if you know the association of that teardrop, I just don't understand why it would be on your face.
Right. So I think that, we can talk about those things without disrespecting Malcolm. I mean, I think that we can say, look, if you look at somebody like Tupac Shakur was a great man, but he was a complex man. He was a man who stood for a lot of, extraordinary things and did some great things in his life, but he's also a knucklehead at times. He did some things that he shouldn't have been proud of. And I think it's okay to talk about people in that light. And what really makes me saddest about Malcolm, and this is what reflects, to all the little black boys that are out here dealing with all kinds of crazy social problems, parents who are addicted to drugs, things like that, is that every single day, these social problems, these little hang-ups, these little distractions are literally killing hundreds of potential Malcolm X's every single day. We kill the spirits of our children before they get to the age of 6. And so they don't have a chance to become the next Malcolm X because they're dealing with all these other social problems. They're trying to figure out how to get to school without being shot. They're trying to figure out how to deal with the fact that maybe their mother didn't love them. They're trying to deal with the fact that they didn't have a father. They're trying to deal with the fact that they had to overcome poverty. They had to overcome a lack of education. So, my argument on this and Malcolm and why his life intrigues me so much is I saw this person who said, my grandfather was a great man. I want to be just like that. I want to be something that people can look up to. And you're kind of like royalty, like a king. When you're meant to take over the throne, kings in royalty are groomed from birth to prepare to take over the throne because there's a certain way you have to think to be a king. He wasn't groomed that way. Life did not groom him to fill the throne. He was a person with a size 5 foot trying to fit a size 15 shoe. And I feel that the pressure must have been overwhelming on this poor guy. And I just think about all those other little black boys who could be kings, who could be great leaders, who just, the distractions just throw you off. Like the only way I was able to even do the few things that I was able to accomplish in my life was because I was able to get away from those distractions. I moved away from relatives that were harming my ability to advance. I stay away from situations that might cause me to have to, do something that's not going to be good for my future. I had to do that as a young man to achieve my goals. And so I think that what happened to Malcolm is really a reflection of what's happened to so many millions of young black men across the country. Now, what is your take on some of that, Yvette?
Well, I think it is. And I think, offline, I've had a lot of conversations with people about legacy and about, if you have kids, what is the legacy for that child and how do you prepare the child for that legacy? And I think what you find and it's not just Malcolm, but you find this in a lot of people in terms of there's a great expectation, but there's nothing set aside. There's nothing done to groom that child for that expectation. So the child is trying to reach a certain place, but he or she doesn't have the tools to kind of reach where they're supposed to reach or where their expectation is. And you can just imagine the amount of self-hate and self-resentment that builds in a young person in terms of what they're trying to do, what they don't have the skills to do, but what they're expected to do. So, in terms of that, my heart just goes out for the young man because I know when people look at him and they know his last name, I know what the expectation was. I know he felt that, and I know he probably didn't have what it took because of what happened in his life, no fault of his own, to meet that expectation.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it's very important for us to communicate very clearly that we're not trying to disparage his memory. We're not trying to disrespect him. Okay. We're just trying to be honest and authentic and to learn from his life. I think that he was here for a reason. I think that he gave so much to so many people. But I think we'd be lying to ourselves if we didn't say that he didn't fulfill his potential. But again, that's not necessarily a fault of his own. I feel that our society killed that poor boy's spirit before he had a chance to ever become the man he was meant to be. So Yvette, I'll let you get the last word. I always talk a little bit more than I should. Did you have any more thoughts or?
No, just it. I would just want to reiterate what you said in terms of we're not disparaging him. It's good to take an honest look at people. That doesn't mean that you're tearing them down. That just means that you want to look at someone else's life and you want to learn from it. Maybe there are some young guys who can look at his life and say, you know what, if I should probably do some things differently. I made some of those same mistakes. And they can look at his life too and say, hey, I want to go places and speak on those things like he did. I want to have that kind of impact that he was trying to have at the time of his death. So I think that goes both ways.
Yeah, I agree with you. I should make it clear that I am a tremendous admirer of Malcolm X. He's one of my 3 greatest heroes of all time. I had a picture of him on my living room wall. And it's interesting though, because even though I admire him so much, I critiqued his life. I have asked myself, whether or not, it made sense that his family paid such a huge price for what he was doing in the community. If you look at what's happened with his kids and with Dr. King's kids, I would say that their outcomes were less than ideal. Let's just say that. And I wonder, how do you balance that sacrifice for the community with, what you actually owe your family? Because I believe that Malcolm's daughter, she seemed to struggle as a result of what she saw at an early age. And so a lot of this pain, I think, that she passed on to her son was really intergenerational. So first I want to say thank you very much for your time, Yvette. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
And thank you all for checking us out at yourblackworld.com. And until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.